Hello! If you're like me, you may be fawning over the new releases from Oden's Eye in their single eyeshadow collection. I am not going to be buying any of those right now. Some of you may know I'm getting married in a few months, and I also am planning on traveling to Japan, so those are eating up my budget, and I just don't have the finances to be adding new eyeshadows to my life right now. So if you're like me and for whatever reason you are intrigued by the new Oden's Eye release, but you have a large singles collection and maybe you aren't looking to add anything new right now, hopefully this video will be helpful for you, because today I'm going to be going through my collection and showing you what I think may be dupes for some of the new Oden's Eye shades. So if you're curious to see some potential dupes for those new shadows, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. Go ahead and do these in numerical order as listed on Oden's Eye's website. And for reference, I used the Oden's Eye pictures, Angelica Nyquist video, and Batty Beans video. These first two shades that I've swatched, I think are going to be pretty close dupes for the shade Lola, number 1 in the multi-chromes. This first shade is from Copacetic Cosmetics. This is Garden Picnic. And then the second shade is from Sugar Drizzle Polish. This is the shade Sugar Dew. These are dupes for each other, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be dupes for Lola as well. You can see right here they've got like a goldy green color going on, but they do shift to a blue and pink as well, and that's exactly how Lola is described, is a white base, light green, light pink, and blue multi-chrome effect. So if you have either of these already, I would say you could probably skip out on that one and still have something similar. These aren't necessarily more affordable options. I believe that the Copacetic one actually is cheaper, but the Sugar Drizzle one is not. But I'm just throwing out things so that way if you have them in your collection, you can avoid getting things that you may not need. Next up is multi-chrome shade number 2, Ingrid. For this, I have the shade Cosmic Noon from Terra Moons, and I think that this is going to be pretty similar, maybe a little bit stronger in the base than the new Oden's Eye shade, but I think they're going to be pretty similar. This one from Terra Moons has an olivey green base with gold and pinky orange kind of shifts in it, and the one from Oden's Eye is described as green, light gold, and pink multi-chrome effect. So based on everything I've seen, I'm pretty certain these are going to be pretty close. Next is shade number 3, Maya. When I first saw it, I thought it was Maja. Like if you've seen Adventure Time, there's a character named Maja, but in Angelica's video, she said in Swedish it's pronounced Maya, so that's what we're going with. For me, the shade that I have that I think is going to be pretty close is from Touch of Glam. This is Watermelon Sorbet, and there are shades from other brands that are similar to this. I know, like, I think it's called Break of Dawn from Shine by SD is the same as this shade, and there are others as well, I guarantee. But this one on the Oden's Eye website is described as orange pink, light gold, and pink with fine shimmer multi-chrome effect. But in Angelica's video, I felt like it looked like it was going a little bit green, and that's what this one does as well. I'm not sure if this is going to be 100%. In the pan, I feel like the one on Oden's Eye's website looks a lot more orange than it does in the videos I saw, so I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking this might be a dupe. I actually don't think I have dupes for shades 4 or 5, Angela or Isabella. Isabella is one that is on my radar if I do end up purchasing any of these in the future once it's in my budget. But Angela, from everything I've seen from people's videos, doesn't look like it's swatching very well, so I don't really have dupes for either of those anyways. But moving on, one I do think I have a dupe for, and I think it's a pretty good dupe, is shade number 6, Judy. And I have Glam Rush from Shine by SD. This one is a little bit more affordable, so, and I know a lot of people have this one already, so if that's you, you might already have this shade. They describe this as a light purple, pink, and baby blue multi-chrome effect, and that is exactly what this shade is, except it also has some gold and like tealy green in there as well. But from the videos that I've seen, it seems like this is going to be pretty close. Next is the shade No, and I think that this is going to be pretty close to Palace from Cleona Cosmetics. I actually think the one from Oden's Eye might be a little bit more affordable than the Cleona one, but I think they're going to be pretty similar. That one is described as a pink base with pink, gold, and purple multi-chrome effects. This one has that pink and gold, but it doesn't go purple. It more goes like a tealy green shade. But again, despite the description, the swatches that I saw in videos make it seem like this is going to be pretty close. This next shade, Thor, I have a few that I think may be close, and they're at varying price points. This first one is from Shine by SD. This is the shade Wine It Up. It's one of their duochromes. It does not swatch well, but with a glitter glue, it does look nice on the eyes, and it's got that blackened base with that purple that shifts kind of gold. It doesn't quite go green on this one, but it does go a very strong gold. And that shade from Oden's Eye is described as a purple, green, gold, 3-colored multi-chrome effect. So you are getting 2 out of the 3 colors for a much lower price, but the formula is a little bit challenging to work with. This next shade, I honestly can't remember what it's called. It's from Look-See. This is their multi-chrome Euphoria. This one I think is going to be pretty dang spot on. It's got that blackened base with that purple that shifts to a goldy like green color. So I really think that one's going to be pretty close. And then the last one is the shade Scream from Look-See. This is one of their $3 shades. And again, blackened base with the purple. And this one is much deeper, so I think it might be a little bit darker than the one from Oden's Eye, but I'm not sure if you can see it kind of peeking through, but it does shift a goldy green color. So any of these 3 I think would be decent dupes and, you know, would be filling the same type of void in a collection as the one from Oden's Eye. So for the last 2 shades from Oden's Eye, I've got a few different ones that I think could work. I actually went ahead and added another one off camera after reading the description from Oden's Eye. I think it might be close. So this is the shade Marius that I'm trying to dupe right now from Oden's Eye. It's described as a metallic copper, gold, and brown green multi-chrome effect. This first shade, well, these are both from Shine by SD. This one's called Raging Fire, and then the other one that I added is called Harvest. And I think that this looks closer to the swatch that I saw on Angelica's channel, but this second one seems like it's closer to the description that Oden's Eye gives. The second one is that same duochrome formula that needs a glitter glue, so keep that in mind as I'm swatching it out. But that first one, it's orange and it kind of goes a little bit red, but it does go green as well, which is why I think it might be close. And this one underneath doesn't have like as black of a base, but it does also go kind of like that peachy orange color to a goldy green. So I'm thinking that these 2 in different ways may be similar. Obviously these aren't dupes for each other, but I think that the one from Oden's Eye lies somewhere in between. Go ahead and just do the last one while I'm here. For all intents and purposes, I don't think that this last shade from Oden's Eye is a multi-chrome, even though it's labeled as that. I guarantee they're labeling it like that because the pigment is expensive, so it falls into that price point. That's the shade Leon, and it's called a bright red and black with bright red shimmer multi-chrome effect. From everything I've seen, it doesn't look like it's multi-chrome, but it does look like it's a very sparkly red. I don't have a sparkly red, and mine doesn't have a black base, but if you are looking for a red, this one is from Terra Moons. This is the shade Cerise Waves, and it is a pretty true, like, metallic-y kind of red shade. So if that is what you're looking for, this one is a way cheaper alternative, but granted, I don't think it's nearly as sparkly as the one from Oden's Eye will be. Now we're gonna go ahead and move into the shimmers. First is the shade Emma. This one seems like it has some base color in the pan, but when Angelica specifically swatched it, it looks very, very light, and she did call it a topper. And so because of that, I'm thinking that this shade Soda Swamp may have a similar effect. This one is from Divina. Now, granted, I will say the Oden's Eye shimmers are surprisingly affordable. They're what, $6.90? I think this one from Divina is $8. So I'm not sure that most of these are going to be more affordable, save the shadows I have from like Looksy or Pretties for Your Face. But again, if you already own some of these, it might give you pause before you go and buy some of these shades from Oden's Eye, which is the goal. I mean, who needs dupes? You know, I have a ton. I wish I didn't, so I'm trying to help out. Hopefully, you know, these are accurate. I can't say for sure, though, because I obviously don't have the Oden's Eye shades. This next one is one that's on my radar personally if I was going to make an order. This is the shade Olivia. It's described as a light orange pink base with multicolor shimmers dominated by blue, gold, and pink. So the shade that I have to compare it to is Until Dawn from Looksy, and from the descriptions, it doesn't seem like it'd be similar, but from both Batty Bean and Angelica's swatches, it seems like this might be close. It's kind of got like a gold and peach kind of shift going on in it, and it's got that really chunky sparkle, which seems to be true in that shade as well. That's one that I would take the risk and see if it was similar by purchasing it, but in the back of my head, I'm wondering if it's close to this one. Next one is Ava, and I actually don't think I have a dupe for that one, but it is one that I would be interested in purchasing if I were going to make an order. This next shade, Charlotte, is one that I feel like a lot of brands have done. I have two depotted from palettes, and so if you have either of these palettes, you may want to hold off on buying this single shadow. The two palettes that I'm talking about are the Simply Posh Fairy Tale Fairies palette and the Sugar Drizzle Sugar Dreams palette. Both have a kind of corally pink with a gold in it, and I think that's going to be really, really similar to the one from Oden's Eye. But I also brought out the shade in Terra's, which is considered like a multi-chrome. This is from Terra Moons. It's much more expensive, but it's one that's been around for a long time, and I know a lot of people have this or have something similar like Unexplainable or something like that. And again, I think it's going to be really similar to the shade from Oden's Eye. Next, we've got the shade Mia, which is described as a baby pink base with multicolored shimmers. I have a lot that I feel like kind of fall into this category, but I try to keep it brief with 3. This one is depotted from that same Sugar Drizzle Sugar Dreams palette. So again, if you've got that palette, you might not need multiple of these shades. This, again, pretty perfect, right? Light pink, silvery blue kind of sparkle in it. Looks pretty similar to the swatches that I saw. One that, again, I feel like a lot of people have is from Lethal. This is the shade Evoke. It's like a pink base with a kind of blue. It's not as shiny. It's more of like a satin, but if you have it, it might be filling a similar kind of thing. And then lastly, this shade is from Shine by SD. This is Guessing Games. This is a lighter pink, but it's got that same silvery multicolored sparkle to it, so I figured pretty close, all three of these. Next shade is Ella. It's described as a white base with a very bright gold shimmer. This is a shade that every brand seems to have. The version that I have is from Give Me Glow. It's called Halo, and here it is. I feel certain that this is a 100% dupe for that shade. Again, chances are you've got something like this, so double check if you were looking at that shade. Next is one that I am very drawn to, and I'm not sure if any of these are an exact dupe. It's the shade Chloe, and it's described as a light violet base with multicolor fine shimmers, but it looks more silvery almost in what I've seen. So this first shade that I'm going to swatch is from the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette, so I think that's pretty close. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is. Next to that, this is Silenzio Bruno from Copacetic. A little bit more silver, but something similar about it. And then this last one is Lucent Ray from Divina, and it's got, again, a kind of purpley base with something very silver about it. That is one I absolutely would get if I was making an order, but I feel like in my heart I have something similar. I just don't want to admit it because I love that shade. I think it's so pretty in all of the swatches I've seen. The next shade is Emily, and the description of this shade is purple base with multicolored fine shimmers dominated by purple and pink. But in the swatches that I saw, it seemed like it was a little bit more silvery leaning than pink leaning. I don't know if that's just the camera quality or what, but because of that, the shades that I chose to compare it to are Lethal Synth, and this one is depotted from, again, that same Sugar Drizzle, Sugar Polish, like, what's it called? Sugar Dream palette, I think it is. But if we're going off of the description on Oden's Eye's website with the purple with pink shimmer, I would say Lethal Twilight is probably the closest that I have, but in the videos, it doesn't seem like it's this type of color. Next is another purple called Stella. This is described as a blue-purple base with multicolor fine shimmers. The shades that I want to compare it to are Pretties for Your Face Asteroid, which I think is going to be pretty much spot on. And I think that the next one's a little bit lighter. This is Once Upon a Time from Looksy, but it is that blue purple. It just is a little bit lighter in the base, which I'm not sure is 100% right. And then next is the shade Ivy, which is described as an orange base with rose pink fine shimmer. And in the swatch, it seems like it's pretty close to Cleona Torch. So if you have that original glitter multichrome from Cleona Torch, you might not need Ivy. We're actually gonna jump to number 12 really quick. That's the shade Lucy, because it's the one that would fit in the palette. And I think the closest dupe that I have is Caterpillar from Looksy. This shade is described as an orange-red base with orange gold shimmers, and that's exactly what this shade from Looksy is, but I think Divina Lynx would be pretty close too. Next is the shade number 11. This is Nora. This is one that is so tempting to me. It's described as a light champagne with super shimmers. What are super shimmers? I don't know, but I want to know. But I think color-wise, it's pretty close to something like this, although it seems like it has less of a base in the videos that I saw. But the two shades that I have for you are JD Glow Gleam, and this is from Touch of Glam, but what is this called? I can't remember. This is Lit, and this is actually one of their most affordable shades, and I love this shadow. I think it's so pretty. So if you've got one of these two, you might not need Nora, although if you're like me, it might pull you in anyways. The shade Samantha is described as a light gold base with multicolored shimmers, And I think it's going to be close to this one from Clarity Cosmetics, which is the shade Wedding Bells. There's also one from Give Me Glow that I have that I feel like it's a little bit less golden, so I think it's a little bit more off. But I do have that in a dupe video, so if you want to see that one too, I have it swatched out other places. I'll link it below. I'm going to go ahead and swatch out the golden shades all together. So next is Victoria, which is described as a gold base with gold shimmers. I have the shade Queen from Lethal, and I think that this is going to be spot on, if we're being honest. I also think my beloved Fallen Stacks, which has broken, is going to be pretty close too. Here's a little tiny swatch of it from What Remains. This one is from Looksy, and you can see they're both, I mean, if you've got a yellow gold, you've got Victoria. Next is the shade Laura, which is another one that's on my wish list if I was going to make an order. This is considered a gold brown base with multicolor fine shimmers. I think it's going to be close to Looksy Social Butterfly. I think it's going to be pretty close. But I also decided after reading the description to pull out Hot Stuff from Sydney Grace because it may be close to this too. This one's a little bit more legit brown, but it has less shimmer. It does have a little bit of gold though, so one of these two I think is going to be pretty close. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that blues aren't necessarily my thing, but I did pull out a few that I think may be close. First is the shade Jacob, which is described as a light mint blue base with multicolored fine shimmers. The shades that I went ahead and pulled out, this one is from Glaminatrix. This is Bunny. And then I also went ahead and pulled out Santa Monica from Looksy. This one in Angelica's video looks like it has a little bit of something golden about it, which is why I thought Bunny would be a good one. But then she also mentioned something a little bit purpley about it, which was why I pulled out Santa Monica. Obviously, these aren't dupes for each other, but again, I think Jacob probably lies somewhere in between these two. Next is the shade Nicholas, which is described as a light blue base with light blue fine shimmers. I pulled out this one from that same Sugar Drizzle Sugar Dreams palette. It's a little bit more cool toned with a pink shimmer on top, but that's kind of what the swatch video that Angelica did looks like to me, so take that one with a grain of salt. It might not be close. Again, I don't have it, so I don't really know. Next is the shade Daniel, which is described as a sky blue base with multicolored fine shimmers. I pulled out this one from Looksy. I think it's Dark Waters. Yep, it's Dark Waters. And it's got a pretty true blue base with something a little bit golden that shifts purpley to it. And again, maybe not 100%, but the closest thing that I have. I don't think I have anything close to David, but the next one I think I do. The next shade is Anthony, and it's described as a black blue base with multicolored fine shimmers, and it shifts a little bit purple in the video that Angelica has. So I think it's pretty close to this shade, depotted from the Friendcation palette from Dose of Colors. So if you have that palette still, break that bad boy out and pull out the shade, and I think it's going to be pretty close to Anthony. The first green shade is Justin, and it's described as a grass green base with golden shifts. First, I pulled out Emerald City from Looksy. I think this one might be a little too light, but it is a green with golden shifts. I also went ahead and pulled out Turtle Club, which may be a little bit too dark, but again, it's got that description. So again, in between here, probably. If you've been on my channel, you will know it has been the bane of my existence trying to find a dupe for the shade Prismatic from JD Glow. It seems like it's undupable. So when I saw the shade Kevin, I got deeply excited because I think it's gonna be a dupe for this one, for real, for real. I think it's gonna be a prismatic dupe. Everything about it seems like it's going to be, and as a result, it is on my list just because I need to know if it's really a dupe. It's described as a light green base with multicolor fine shimmers, but in both Batty Bean and Angelica's videos, it seemed like it had a blue shift, which is very promising to me. Next is the shade Kristoff, and I think that this one, depotted from the It's Bell Break the Rules palette, is going to be similar. It's described as a green metallic with gold shimmers, and that's what this shade is. So if you have this palette, you might have a shade similar to Kristoff. Next is the shade John, and it's described as a bright green base with multicolored shimmers. The closest thing that I have is this shade from Terra Moon's Radial Velocity. It's got a blue shimmer in it. It's kind of similar to Prismatic, but a much brighter green base. So I thought maybe the base color was similar to John, but honestly, I don't know if I have something quite like that shade. And then last in this set of greens is the shade Noah, which is a dark green metallic base with multicolored fine shimmers. And I picked the shade Dragon Slayer from Looksy. I think this one's going to be pretty close. From the videos that Angelica and Batty Bean put out, it seems like this one is pretty much spot on. Moving into more silvery shades, first we have the shade Samuel, which is described as a bright silver. I think it's going to be pretty close to this shade that just came out from Terra Moon's called Moonshine. This one's got a little bit more color in it, a little bit of like blue and pink sparkle, but it kind of felt like the one that Angelica swatched had a little bit of color to it as well, so this might be a good option. But my two favorite silvers that I have are both depotted. First is from the ColourPop Wet palette a long time ago, but if you've got that one, you've already got a beautiful silver. And then the next one is from the Nabla Platinum Cuties palette. So again, if you've got that palette, you've already got a beautiful silver, so you might not need to add a new one. The next shade, Robert, is described as a gray purple base with silver shimmers. I went ahead and pulled out Goody Goody Gumdrop, which is a new shade from Looksy. This one's a little bit more purple and green, but it seems like it's kind of similar to the swatch that Angelica had for that first shade that I was just swatching, Samuel. So I thought I'd pull it out and compare it just in case. I also think that JD Glow Good God is going to be a pretty good alternative to that shade Robert, but it seems like it's a little bit deeper, and so I thought another new Terra Moon's shade, Lunar Lavender, is that what this is called? Yes, it is. It's Lunar Lavender, and this one's got a little bit more base, but again, it's got something silvery about it, so I thought that was a pretty close dupe from everything I saw. We've just got 3 shades left. First is Gabriel. It's described as a gray-green base with golden shimmers, and I think Looksy Rockstar is exactly what that description is. It's kind of got something gray about the base, but it is still green, and then it's got a gold shimmer on top. And in the swatches too, it looked like this was going to be pretty close, maybe a little bit darker than Gabriel, but it's going to be a close dupe, I'm pretty certain. Next to that is what I'm less certain of. It's the shade James, and it's described as a tan base color with multicolor fine shimmers. It seems like it's gonna be pretty deep, and it did look like it had a little bit of something golden in it, so I thought I'd compare it to the flaky shade Splendor from Copacetic. Texture-wise, I'm not expecting these to be the same, but I thought color-wise, they might be close. And I thought another new Terra Moon shade might be pretty close as well. This is the shade Mocha Twilight, and this is even darker. I think it's probably darker than James, but in the pan, it looks like it's really similar, so I'm not sure. And last but not least is the shade Luke. It's described as a reddish-brown base with multicolored fine shimmers. This is a type of color that I feel like a lot of brands have done. I think the closest shade that I have is this one, depotted from ColourPop. It's from the Lavender 9-pan, like monochromatic palette, But I also think it's supposed to be very similar to their single shadow shade, Mr. Sandman. So if you have either of those, you might have something really, really close to Luke already. But I also thought I'd pull out the Looksy shade Hybrid. This is already a dupe for the Terra Moons shade Terra Borealis, but I think it's pretty close to, again, the vibe of Luke. It's got that reddish brown base. This one's got a little bit more of a blue shimmer in it, whereas this one's a little bit more silvery purple. And then right in between those is the shade Mystic Moon Pie from Divina, which has that blue-brown base with a little bit more of a silver going through it rather than a blue. So something along those lines I think is going to be pretty close to Luke. Well, there you have it. Those are the shades that I think are going to be dupes in my own collection for things coming out in the new Oden's Eye single shadow release. I hope, if anything, this was helpful for you to think about shades that you might have in palettes, depotted, or as single shadows that you've bought in the past that may be close to these new shades coming out. I feel like when a new release happens, it can be really easy to get caught up in the hype and want to buy it just because it's new and exciting, even if it's not necessarily fulfilling a purpose in your makeup collection and what you use or want. So I hope that this got you thinking about that a little bit. If you feel like you know of shades that are going to be dupes for any of the shadows, let us know in the comments below. Let's help each other save some money, not buy things that we already own. And until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!